Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Can you believe it? To another edition of the Tougie Steak Podcast. I also didn't think we'd be back this early. It was just a few days ago that I put out a video saying, hey, I don't know what the hell our schedule is going to be. And, well, look at us. We found time. And by we, I mean myself. Endurance. And don't worry, it's not Sin for the win, but it is another massive hockey music fan with tremendously flowing hair. It is our friend from Game Over Ottawa, previously of the SDPN, now as an independent status with Game Over Ottawa.
Yeah.
It is our buddy, Charlie Arsenault. And Charlie, it is good to finally be able to talk hockey with you again.
Yeah, we had an episode planned for last season before things were cut a little short. So yeah, this is round two of the two of us talking, and round one for me and Endo. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, excited to talk hockey and you know, maybe talk stuff that isn't just the Sens, which is going to be a nice change of pace for me.
Well, we will get a decent amount of Sens talk because obviously it worked out perfectly that you and I had talked anyway about you being on the show. And then, hey, what do you know? The Bruins and Sens pull off a trade that we'll bury the lead on and talk about that a little bit later on, because there is a ton of hockey in general to talk about in what is maybe the busiest week in hockey history at this stage. Shout out to the NHL for having the season end on June 24th, leading directly into the draft. But hey, it gives us plenty of stuff to talk about at the very least. And we got to kick things off here. Normally we get some viewer questions in there. There is just way too much hockey to talk about. So let's get into it with, first and foremost, the biggest story in hockey, of course. Alex Merrill. No, I'm joking. We don't have to talk about Alex Merrill.
Fucking waste of space. I'll say it. Waste of space.
So I will say, typically when there's news that happens with the Coyotes, we have our good friend Deke Slayer on the show to talk about it. We weren't able to schedule that today because, as it is, this podcast was a short notice scheduling. And hey, again, credit to the fellas here for making it work. But we might just have Deke on sooner rather than later to talk about the Coyotes and the Meruelo move and him just outright ditching the team after a land auction cancellation. And my general thoughts on that, because again, we don't have to go too in depth. And I was actually joking about talking about it first, but screw it, whatever, we're here. Yep. The hope was he wasn't a snake oil salesman. And as it turns out, he was the snake oil salesman.
They got monorailed 100%. Like he made so much more money out of it. And the whole clause where like, you can get your team back, but then we need the money that we gave you back. It's like, that's a clause to basically get the hell out of town.
Yeah.
And there's so many things about that move. Not only just, you know, having the rights, having your son be the social media manager for that team. Like we can talk about it a little bit here, but when we have Deke on, he's gonna basically go nuclear about everything that's wrong with there. Not even like the Shane Doan situation where the son's like, nah, I don't think he's good for leadership. It's like, my brother in Christ, you are the number one nepotism hire in probably NHL history. It's unfortunate. Yeah. Like their fans don't deserve any of that crap over there. It's sad.
Again, it was one of those things where it's like you hope this is the guy to finally bring that stability. And I, you know, on stream last night talking about the Cup final and everything, I mentioned that the Florida Panthers and the Arizona Coyotes are two sides of the same coin. Both franchises dealt with a lot of instability, dealt with consistent talks of relocate them to Quebec, relocate them here, move them here. The Panthers found the steady ownership. They found the right front office pieces to direct that team in the right way, including some damn bold moves. As you know, we're going to talk about the Panthers in a second, but you even think back to just the balls of Bill Zito to trade Jonathan Huberdeau when he did. And it leads to a Stanley Cup, and the Panthers figured it out, and the Coyotes simply never did, even when, it looked like they were going to. And it's funny because you say, well, they never figured it out. Like, obviously the team is still going, right? So it's just not Arizona that's going to benefit from it. But now you have Utah that is very much going to benefit from the fact that Bill Armstrong is a tremendous GM. And they have, by my calculations, don't consider this a precise number, a bajillion draft picks over the next 3 years, is I believe that's the technical term. For the record, it's their first round picks in each of the next 3 years. They have 10 second round picks over the next 3 years and 7 third round picks. Not to mention other moves they can make.
The only defenseman they have under contract right now is Shea Weber.
Correct. Which I was going to bring up later.
Speaking of Shea Weber.
Hall of Famer Shea Weber, I think you mean.
Utah Hockey Club legend.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, you know what? Screw the run sheet. We'll just run with it. But again, we'll have Deke on to talk more about how Coyotes fans are feeling about all of this, and it's positive. People are very happy to see Merrill go, even if it means, oh shit, we might not have to wait 5 years, we might have to wait 10. There's more confidence now that when they get that team back, because they will, as we've talked about throughout the history of the show, that is far too valuable of a market to not have a presence in to try and grow the game. I.e., look at Austin Matthews. They would like more of that. So again, we'll see how that goes. But you know what? Shea Weber was mentioned.
Shea Weber boy.
Shea Weber boy. Let me tell you, a good Canadian kid plays the game hard. Just full
shot first ballot. Oh boy. Charlie, as you've noticed, this is a very vibes run podcast. There is a run sheet. I believe I coined the phrase fraudcast because there is a list of stuff that we usually do talk about, but it's never in order. We usually cut back to the exact same things, maybe like 10, 15 minutes later. Yep. Usually I do because I have ADHD. And it's just a giant hodgepodge of a mess.
Yeah, that's great. I everything goes off the rails on Game Over Ottawa when I'm involved as well. So this is a good mix. This is really good. I go off on a tangent in like the wrong direction and I have to be pulled back in. So if we're all doing that, it should be a fun show.
Yes,
pretty solid.
It should be. So the Hockey Hall of Fame, the latest inductees were announced today. We could talk about the Cup final later. What's the big deal about the Stanley Cup final? It's funny because this was kind of like, oh shit, I really should see if people have the time to do a show today because there's just so much to talk about. And Shea Weber, first ballot Hall of Famer as technically an under contract player to an NHL team. Let me go over, and we're going to go over the Hall of Fame inductees for this class. I'm going to read off their resumes here, and, we'll kind of give our thoughts on this. But first and foremost, even with Shea Weber, it's weird that technically an under contract player, even though he's retired, it's weird that he's been inducted into the Hall of Fame, right?
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, I think the other guy to be in the Hall is Jagr.
Yeah.
He's still an active player. He still is active with his team.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Shea Weber, second round pick in 2003. That 2003 draft is legendary for so many reasons. His resume is interesting. Of course, multiple-time All-Star, much like Jacob Trouba, a Messier Leadership Award recipient. So look forward to Hall of Famer Jacob Trouba in 10 years. Funny enough, though, for Shea Weber, what's kind of crazy to me, right, is, okay, you look at like his career, like WHL champion, World Junior Gold medalist, stuff like that. Multiple-time All-Star, Olympic gold medal in 2010 in Vancouver. In terms of Norris trophies, 2011 finalist, 2012 finalist, 2013-14 finalist. Shea Weber never won a Norris Trophy. He has no Norris Trophies, no Stanley Cups, yet he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I wonder how many other people that is applicable towards that happen to be in the Hall of Fame. I can't imagine it's many.
Not a lot.
You got to remember, he shot a puck through a net that one time. So,
look,
you know,
his player type on Elite Prospects is heavy shooter / two-way defenseman. All right, so look, I liked Shea Weber a lot. I mean, there was a time where if you could say, well, who's the one defenseman you would want your team to have, it would have been Shea Weber at the top of that list.
Yeah.
But it's just very weird that, again, he never won a Norris, never won a Stanley Cup, and those seem to be requirements. Like, we're going to talk about the Florida Panthers obviously winning the Stanley Cup. Sergei Bobrovsky, there were some people, the entire argument about during this Cup final was, is he a Hall of Famer? And now that he's won a Stanley Cup, the answer is absolutely yes, he is. But two Vezinas, potentially three, who knows? I think most people believe Connor Hellebuck will win it this year. But, you know, two Vezinas wasn't even enough for people to say slam dunk nominee. Yet Shea Weber did not need to win a Norris and definitely did not need to win a cup. I mean, he appeared in one final. Worth noting, by the way, let me see if I can find the winners, which is what I wanted to mention. So 2010, 2011, he finished third in voting behind Nick Lidstrom and winner Zdeno Chara. In 2011-12, he finished third behind Erik Karlsson and Zdeno Chara, who won that award. In 2013-2014, he finished third behind Duncan Keith and Zdeno Chara. So Zdeno Chara is making the Hockey Hall of Fame. That's confirmed, as if it wasn't already. But I like it for Shea Weber. It's just it doesn't seem to line up with the consistency for what someone needs to have accomplished to have gotten into the Hall of Fame based on what we've seen.
It's
We're
weird.
in agreement. That happens a lot.
It's just
by the way.
it's really odd. Like, if he made it, you know, for some reason 7 years down the line or something, and people are like, all right, yeah, I mean, sure, but first ballot is wild. It's absolutely wild.
Put PK
Next
in the
up.
hall next to him. That's all I gotta say. You're gonna put this guy in the hall. You can put PK in the hall.
1 for 1.
PK's got a Norris.
Yeah.
PK is more deserving. There you go.
So
There you go.
like, yeah.
even not even as a player, even as a builder, all the stuff he's done over in Montreal with the kids. What is it? The kids hospital over there. Stuff he does outside of it as well. Like, I don't know. I'm gonna always talk good about the guy who I share a birthday with and was my favorite defenseman growing up. So I'm gonna stick to my guns there and say PK, put him in the hall. Forget it. Just put him in there.
Worth noting for Shea Weber as well. You know, career stats aren't everything, obviously, but in terms of his career totals, by the way, for the Coyotes / Vegas Golden Knights legend, he did finish with 589 points in 1,038 career games, which isn't, which isn't too bad. I'm looking up really quickly where he ranks amongst defensemen, because I don't know how high up he is in that regard either. It's a weird one. I like Shea Weber, but it is a bit bizarre. He is 49th all time in scoring amongst defensemen.
Pretty good.
He has, okay. Here are some of the names that are above Shea Weber in terms of all-time production. The old heads might remember Gary Galley, formerly of the Kings, Caps, Bruins, Flyers, Sabres. I mean, he played all over the place. Alex
I remember
Pietrangelo.
him. Oh, I remember him. Oh, no, I don't.
Keith Yandel, Teppo Numminen, Randy Carlisle has more career
forgot he
points
played
than
hockey.
Shea Weber. Incredible.
I forgot
And Randy
Randy played
Carlisle only played, I believe, 17 more games in his career. So, and again, defensive defenseman, sure, it wasn't necessarily his role to always put up points, but it's just like, okay, he doesn't have the hardware. He doesn't have the point production. Endo mentioned this podcast running on vibes. Shea Weber made it into the Hall of Fame based on vibes.
Yeah. The vibe.
Next up, Jeremy Roenick is finally a Hockey Hall of Famer. First round pick, 8th overall in 1988 to Chicago. His resume: Olympic silver medalist, some World Junior success. Yep. That's about it. He does have 1,216 points in 1,363 games. So the scoring is definitely there. Multiple time All-Star, one of the best American players ever. So I'm not necessarily surprised to see him in with that point production. But again, it feels like we're in a new era with the Hockey Hall of Fame where they're starting to consider awards less important, whether at a team level with the Stanley Cup or even at an individual level. Because again, Jeremy Roenick, great player, but was never the best player, was never a finalist for an award. Granted, voting was a little bit different back in the day, but still, it's just another one that's a little bit surprising to me, just because, again, for the lack of awards.
Another example of the Hall of Fame not necessarily being the Hall of Good people as well, because he was fired by NBC because of his anti-straight discrimination. I don't know if you guys remember that one. So,
Jesus,
so he has a he has a controversy section on his Wikipedia, which is
never good. That's never good.
Let's go over a few of these. It starts off, Roenick's openness has often led to controversy. It's never a great way to start. During the 04-05 lockout, he addressed certain fans that perceived NHL players as being spoiled. Roenick told these fans to kiss my ass and accused them of being jealous.
What a crime.
Following the loss of a season with the labor dispute, he found himself at odds with the Philadelphia Flyers, claiming to have been suffering from a concussion, despite Flyers doctors clearing him following his exit physical. He was he was suspended for one game in 03-04 for throwing a water bottle at an official. He claims he was blackballed by USA Hockey for not being included on the 06 Olympic roster, which, by the way, bringing old people to the Olympics didn't work out for Canada in 06 either, so the USA had the right idea. Jeremy Roenick. He said that in 2009, Mike Babcock was biased against American players, which, not the reason to hate on Mike Babcock, but any hate on Mike Babcock is a good reason. Oh, goodness. February 8th, 2006, the Star Ledger reported that Roenick had been identified as one of several NHL players implicated in Operation Slapshot, which was created with the intent to undercover a nationwide gambling ring. It was the second time that Roenick had been investigated for gambling while a part of the NHL. He was arrested for driving with a suspended license in New York in 2017. And then what Charlie referred to, December of 2019, he was suspended by NBC for comments about co-workers Catherine Tapp and Patrick Sharp and Anson Carter during an interview on the Spit and Chicklets podcast. The comments included joking about having a threesome with Tappen. NBC fired Roenick after his suspension ended in February of 2020. He's an interesting guy, that Jeremy Roenick, but he is also a Hockey Hall of Famer.
That's just a fact. That's just undisputable fact.
Straight up fact.
The Hall of Fame might be 0 for 2 so far. Let's see if they go 0 for 3.
Not great.
Next up, Pavel Datsyuk.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah,
There will
we're
be
good.
no disagreement about
No
this.
disagreement.
6th round pick in 1998 for Datsyuk. He is a part of the Triple Gold Club, winning Olympic gold, World Championship gold. He is, of course, a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, a 3-time Patrice Bergeron, Frank J. Selke Trophy winner. He is one of the most influential players of the last 30 years in hockey. And at the NHL level, 918 points in 953 games. Again, while having that reputation of being one of the best two-way players, he was nearly a point per game in his career. And of course, he, left the NHL at a time where he still could have played. Like, his last 5 years were spent back in the KHL, leaving the Red Wings in 2016. He could have easily continued to play another couple of years at the NHL level. His final year in Detroit, 49 points in 66 games. I don't think there'll be any disagreement about this. Pavel Datsyuk should be a Hall of Famer. He has the team success, the individual success, the production, the positive reputation. No denying Pavel Datsyuk is the first, that person should be in player that we've seen so far.
Absolutely. Yep. No doubter.
So see, here's the trouble we run into sometimes. Is I pretty much hit every point, and it just kind of leaves Endo in a spot where he's like, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Good work. Good work, team. Let's
Thank
go.
you.
Great work. One solid clap. Next point. Let's go.
Next up, we have the two women that were inducted, and of course, obviously, in the aftermath of this, don't look at fucking Twitter comments is all I can say.
Women.
Because we're going to tell you why these two are rightfully in. First up is Chrissy Wendell Pohl, who one-time World Championship winner, a 5-time silver medalist at the World Championships for Team USA. Obviously, we would constantly go back and forth with Team Canada. She has an Olympic silver medal, an Olympic bronze medal, 2-time NCAA champion. She's already in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame. And, this is one of those players that did not have the proper stage, right? Like, we've already seen the likes of Haley Wickenheiser, Cami Granado, players like that get their opportunity. These were the next women in line, and really, Chrissy Wendell Pohl was a part of the U.S. teams that went against the likes of Haley Wickenheiser for Team Canada. We've talked a lot about it with the PWHL, where hopefully that is the establishment of the league, and the league that continues on and on. You get to see the best women's players in the world there consistently, and you no longer have to have these moments of who is a Chrissy Wendell Pohl, when in reality, she was a stalwart for Team USA for a decade, roughly. And again, a very important player, one of the best of her era that never had the spotlight on her all that much, especially when you consider the focus, at least in the U.S., on the women's hockey side of things really started to get more of that spotlight in 2010. And she last competed in the Olympics in 2006 for Team USA. So that kind of aftermath of moving on from the Wickenheiser era to that next era that really started to get a lot more attention and appreciation with the Hillary Knights and the Marie-Philippe Poulins of the world. She was before that, and she is an important player to remember. And in the same breath, there's also Natalie Darwitz, who is also now in the Hockey Hall of Fame. 3-time World Championship gold medalist, 5-time silver medalist, 2 Olympic silvers and Olympic bronze. She's in the IIHF Hall of Fame, 2 NCAA titles as well. She's in the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, and is also a alumni of the University of Minnesota. These two played on the same team, which is incredibly impressive. And again, similar. Darwood's played a little bit longer. She did participate in the 2010 Olympic Games, where she had 11 points in 5 games, by the way, for Team USA. So obviously there's going to be a lot of people out there who are just like, who? And ignore those people. It's called inform yourself, because there were some great players that, again, just didn't have the proper stage or spotlight that people should be thankful is starting to be even more established. Now, thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
It's like very bare minimum, so I shouldn't even be like, patting them on the back for this. But like, can we just take a second to appreciate that they actually used both slots for women this year?
Yeah.
It's always one. So about fucking time. Like, again, bare minimum, I shouldn't be patting anyone on the back, but like, just, I think it's worth noting, hey, we finally get to see 2 women in the inductees this year. So hopefully that just continues on, because like you said, there's a whole bunch of unsung heroes for the women's side of the sport that really need to be, more of a household name, I guess.
Right. And then we get to the final 2, both in the builder category. First up, we'll go with the proper one. That being David Poyle, who most people, of course, would know as the Nashville Predators. Like, he was the guy, essentially, for the Nashville Predators from day one. Now, his history in terms of NHL front office work, because he did technically play in the NCAA at Northeastern back in the 60s, his first listed job on Elite Prospects, 1977-78, an assistant general manager for the Atlanta Flames, which is how long this man was around. He was a part of their move to Calgary before eventually going to the Washington Capitals as general manager and vice president of hockey operations from 1982 to 1995. Takes a couple years off and then gets executive vice president of hockey ops and is the general manager of the Nashville Predators. Would eventually be promoted to president of hockey ops in 2007-2008 and was with the Nashville Predators up through this year. Granted, he stepped down into a senior advisor role as you had Barry Trotz take over, but he has been with the Nashville Predators since day one, and that is another organization that had no certainty of working. Very similar to, you had the Southern expansion in the 90s of the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Florida Panthers, Nashville as an expansion team just before, 2000, Hartford being relocated to Carolina. And it's genuinely a miracle that the only team that didn't make it through happened to be the Atlanta Thrashers, not only because of where they were, but because the expansion rules at the time were absolutely horrific and incredibly difficult for anybody to navigate. Especially with Nashville, you are talking about an expansion draft where, oh man, some of the names, some of the players, and some of the names. Let's go over this really quickly. Just to kind of not personify, but just to kind of explain why Vegas or Seattle, it was easier for them. That is because Nashville had, just so few decent names to take. They took Mike Richter from the New York Rangers. That's good, I suppose. They were able to get Thomas Vokoun from Montreal. And then outside of that, like Al Iafrate, who was old at the time, Uwe Krupp was a part of that expansion. Andrew Brunette, who was there for a long time, Greg Johnson, Scott Walker. But then for guys like that, you had Denny Lambert, Jeff Daniels, not the actor, Patrick Cote, Paul Brousseau, and other notable alumni. It was rough. It was a very rough way to start off with a roster like that and to be able to make it work. And I mean, hell, there was the 1999 expansion draft the year after with Atlanta, and then Columbus and Minnesota shared an expansion draft in 2000. There were some growing pains, and obviously, when talking about Minnesota, they've made it to one conference final. That's about it. Columbus made it to the second round once. Atlanta made the playoffs once and got swept. Nashville's made the Cup final. Nashville's easily had the most success of any of those teams that were added in the late 90s, early 2000s, and David Poyle's a big part of the reason for that. So, again, I don't think you'll see any people being like, how the hell did David Poyle make it?
So he became AGM for the Atlanta Flames in 77.
Mhm.
So outside of those 2 years he took off from 77 to 2023, he was an AGM or GM the whole time.
Yes. Like, that's insane. Like,
that's
are you ever going to see longevity like that again?
Especially when, a lot of that was spent in the US. It's only the Canadian GMs that never get fired.
Fair.
So
the final inductee is easily the most controversial. That being Colin Campbell, who some people will know as the father of former Bruin and Florida Panther Gregory Campbell, and others will know as the NHL's senior vice president of hockey ops between 1998 and 2011, a role that he took over after being an assistant coach with the Red Wings and was the former head coach of the New York Rangers. He took over for that team after they won the Cup in 94 when Mike Keenan departed. So he does have a very interesting history. He does have a Stanley Cup ring as a coach. That said, there's a reason why a lot of people don't like Mr. Campbell. To get to cover this reason, here we go. Why not? On November 15th, 2010, to get the context here, TSN and various other media outlets reported on a string of emails from Campbell. The email correspondence became a matter of public record in a wrongful dismissal case of referee Dean Warren against the NHL, and the emails were entered into evidence. Although specific references to names and dates were blacked out, in these emails, Campbell calls Boston Bruins center Mark Savard, quote, a little fake artist, after Warren assessed Campbell's son Gregory, a high sticking minor, on Savard, and sending further emails to Director of Officiating Stephen Walcom, complaining about the work of referees who gave Gregory a late-game penalty that resulted in a tying goal. In a follow-up interview with TSN, Campbell admitted that the email content was inappropriate, but no one told me, or maybe told you 5 years ago, that you can take your emails and read them all. I will repeat that. Campbell admitted the email content was inappropriate, but no one told me, or maybe told you 5 years ago, that someone can take your emails and read them all. Despite the controversy and the admission of inappropriate content and accusations of bias, the NHL posted a strong backing of Campbell on their website, and he continued in their role as senior vice president until stepping down on June 1st, 2011. He was replaced by Brendan Shanahan. He stepped aside just prior to his son playing in the 2011 Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, I did it. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Huh? Nothing. You got nothing.
But hey, at least he's a CTE denier. Like on top of all that, like
check off the boxes.
Just all the boxes. Yeah. Unbelievable work. Unbelievable work by the committee on this one.
Sick league.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just
sick league, dude.
There's another bit here, by the way. During voting for the 2016 NHL All-Star Game, career enforcer John Scott was leading fan voting as the captain of the Pacific Division. In a piece for the Players Tribune, John Scott revealed that one NHL executive attempted to shame him out of competing, asking how his children would feel about his participation. It was revealed many months later in a Twitter tirade from former player Steve Downey that Campbell was this executive. So if you take Steve Downey at his word, Colin Campbell, the no fun police for John Scott in 2016. It's not enough. It's not even enough. Like, if that actually happened, to be like, oh, I don't think he should be there. How would your kids feel?
Pretty fucking good. My dad's in the All-Star game. Are you kidding me?
My dad won a car at the All-Star game.
My dad almost fought Patrick Kane in the All-Star game. In retrospect, maybe he should have done it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, look, it's not surprising to see someone with his connections to the NHL like Colin Campbell make the Hall of Fame. But yeah, there's a reason why people view that as like, just, there's no great way to phrase this, just fuck that guy. Is essentially the attitude from the vast majority of people. Last note on the Hall of Fame, the players who didn't make it, there's a few. Patrick Elias has quite a bit of support, but the big one, surprise, surprise, it's freaking Groundhog Day. Alex Mogilny snubbed again. And it's incredibly rough to see Jeremy Roenick, Shea Weber make it when you could argue, especially in the case of Shea Weber, that they have inferior resumes to Alexander Mogilny. Again, Olympic gold, a Triple Crown winner, right? Olympic gold, World Championship gold, World Junior gold, Stanley Cup champion. His part of being one of the big defectors from CSKA Moscow, coming over to the Buffalo Sabres, 1,032 points in 990 career games. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And goes against common sense, but hey, a lot about hockey in the NHL goes against common sense, doesn't it?
There's one thing the NHL hates. It's common sense.
Yeah.
Simply put, nothing else.
No notes. Perfect.
Everyone says it, and it just, we're repeating it all the time. Best sport, worst league.
Yep.
100%.
100%. Well, we'll get to the positive that they so desperately needed in the aftermath of a season of horrible officiating, even worse DOPS decisions or indecisions, a Hockey Canada scandal that resulted in numerous players being suspended, pending a trial or other findings in a legal proceeding. This was what the NHL needed, and they so desperately got it. It went from being called the worst Stanley Cup final ever to one of the best, as the Florida Panthers avoid the arguably worst collapse in sports history, and they do not get reverse swept in the finals. They win their first ever Stanley Cup in 7 games on home ice in what was an incredibly entertaining game, an incredible atmosphere to go along with it. Again, this was just what the NHL so desperately needed to end this season with. And as far as the game itself, any notes, gentlemen, aside from, I just sum it up as it was a fantastic game to watch.
Yeah. I think out of all the game 7s that there could have been, that was probably one of the best recollection. That game could have gone either way the entire way through. Florida getting the upper hand, and then less than 2 minutes later, Edmonton ties the game. The perfect set screen in the third period there to get a shot on goal. I think it was second period they scored the go ahead goal. Yeah, second period. Just have a guy in front trailing in, just put up a nice pick in front. Beautiful. I will say one thing: Edmonton did not adapt in the third period. They just kept running ISOs for McDavid, and I'm like, you can't just rely on ISOs for a guy with 10 minutes left. You gotta. Not that you got to do better. Obviously, you got to do better to win the cup, but you had to adjust on the fly right there. Maybe that's just Chris Knobloch not really adjusting on the fly, realizing what to do. I'm not gonna go too in depth. I'm not an NHL coach, But that was one thing that I definitely saw is they were trying so hard to keep it, just have him do everything and, because he's your guy. But he wasn't something he wasn't present. They shut him down really really well. Not only just in game 7, but game 6. Like both games, he had no points going into it, and it's caused for some controversy. With the Conn Smythe voting, and them submitting the points in for McDavid. I think it's 10 minutes left in the second. You have to submit your votes.
Yeah, something like that.
10 minutes left in the second. You have to submit your votes. And up until that point, it should have been Connor McDavid. But at the end, when Bobrovsky was shutting the door, that's such a 50-50 moment for voting there. Could have gone to Bob, could have gone to McDavid. You really can't go wrong either way.
We were going to talk about that anyway, so we can talk about it now. Connor McDavid, despite the loss, became the 6th ever Conn Smythe winner from a losing team, the first since J.S. Jaguar in 2003. The voting was nearly unanimous. The ballots were released today. The only person to not have McDavid in first was Ryan Clark of ESPN, who had Bobrovsky first. It's worth noting Barkov was the second place finisher, and in third place was all over the fucking place in terms of Verhaeghe, Bobrovsky, Barkov, Forsling, Stuart Skinner, Jim Matheson, by the way, of Oilers coverage voted McDavid, Hyman, Bouchard, the fucking dickhead.
Yeah.
The most rigged voting I've seen since a reporter covering the Habs left Jerome McGinley off their MVP ballot entirely so that Jose Theodore could win the Hart in 2003, which was tremendous, by the way. The whole McDavid thing, first and foremost, in regards to the game, Knobloch took some heat for that and just running the top players into the ground down the stretch, and also very conservative with the idea of pulling the goaltender. And they got Skinner out of there a bit too late. But time on ice for Game 7. Evan Bouchard led all Oilers skaters at 27 minutes and 43 seconds. His pairing mate, Ekholm, at 26:07. Connor McDavid, 25 minutes and 42 seconds. Hyman at nearly 25 minutes, and Draisaitl at about 22 and a half. They ran McDavid into the ground. 25:42 compared to Sasha Barkov, who only skated for 20 minutes. You can look at the time on ice in this Game 7, and I'll leave the link here for you guys in chat if you want to look at it too. The time on ice says it all. The Florida Panthers had the depth. They had the guys to throw out there to give those top, players a break, and they had confidence in those players. Whereas, the Oilers, you had Derek Ryan just under 7 minutes, Perry just under 8, Ryan McLeod at 9 minutes, Dylan Holloway at 10 and a half. It's one of those things where, outside of the fourth line, I believe, for the Panthers of Stenlund, Okposo, Lomberg, who were all at 9 minutes or under, everybody else played 14 minutes. You had 8 players for the Oilers play under 14 minutes last night. The Panthers just had the depth, and the Oilers' strategy was just keep throwing McDavid out there until the wheels fall off, which isn't inherently the worst strategy to throw the best player out there, but even the best player in the world has a breaking point in terms of his effectiveness, and just when there's nothing left in the reserves to give, right? And to Endo's point, because like I said, we'll talk about, unless you guys have anything else to add, just feel free to interject. We're going to talk about the Florida perspective and everything like that, but Endo kind of mentioned how solid and close of a game this was. We haven't had a close Game 7 in 15 years. The last Game 7 of the Cup final was 2019. The St. Louis Blues won that 4-1. Outside of the first period, toast. The Bruins were toast. Everyone remembers the Brad Marchand poor line change, and from that point on, GG's, game over. The Blues dominated the rest of that game. 2011, Bruins beat Vancouver 4-0 in Game 7. It wasn't close. The Bruins dominated that game. 2009, we had Pittsburgh and Detroit with a 2-1 final. The crazy finish at the end, Marc-Andre Fleury making last-second saves. That was a great finish. And that was kind of a trend, right? Like 2006, 3-1 Carolina over Edmonton. 2004 was 2-1 Tampa. So it had been a little bit since we had seen a really close kind of competitive Game 7, which only added to the fun of the experience as a neutral. It must have been a fucking nightmare to be a Panthers or Oilers fan last night during the course of that game.
That's one thing I don't miss being a Sens fan, is like being stressed while watching hockey. That's like the one thing that, like, the one upside to cheering for an awful team who hasn't made the playoffs in 7 years. Anyway,
God, it's 7 now already.
2017. So
the last bit of playoff action was Chris Kunitz, huh?
As a diehard Sens and Blue Jays fan, I haven't seen one of my teams win a playoff game since 2017.
Dude.
So I'm having a blast. But no, yeah, as like, you know, I mean, I was cheering for Edmonton because I had them picked for my brother's playoff work pool that I do for him. And if they had won, I would have won the whole thing. But other than that, you take that out of it, I was like a pretty neutral watcher. And yeah, it was like, I mean, most of the playoffs in general were fantastic for someone just watching hockey for the sake of it, not cheering for anyone in particular. But yeah, that final, like you said, it went from like one of the worst to like best finals in years. Just, you know, between Game 3 to Game 7, it completely flipped and was just so fun. I am one of those like lame people who's like, I want to see McDavid win the cup. Like, I know the whole like argument is like, if you're cheering for Edmonton because you're Canadian, you're stupid. If you want McDavid to win the cup because he's McDavid, you're stupid. Anyway, I am one of those stupid people. I think McDavid should win. I want to see him win soon. Where was I going with this? It was fun as a neutral viewer, just to be able to watch this. Like, the whole series was great. Yeah, that's it. End of sentence. I lost it in the middle there.
Charlie, I see a little bit of you and myself right there, you know. Constantly going on tangents, not even just like on the podcast, just when we're playing games, I'll go on a tangent and they're just like, Endo, are you done? I'm like, no, but I still got something to go. You're like, no, you're done. Trust me. I believe a podcast that I watched called it an Irish story, where you just go on and on and on about randomness on top of everything else. So, you know, my heritage, my live, like, I guess, has trickled down and made my speech and see, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it right the fuck now. Yeah, but it's been crazy to watch. I was gonna say, as a Blue Jays fan, completely derailing this whole card conversation, I just saw something where Vladdy said he apparently might want to go to the Yankees because baseball is a business, and I'm like, holy shit! What the?
That's like the one team he's always said he would never play for. So
yeah, it's over. Are we that bad? Are we the baddies? Like, what's going on?
For the record, I saw this too. When speaking Monday with a Spanish outlet before a Blue Jays game against the Red Sox in Boston, Toronto first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr. seemed more receptive to donning the pinstripes if traded to the Yankees, after saying in 2022 he'd never play in the Bronx, not even if he was, quote, dead. He has now since said, I'm a worker, I'm a professional. If I get traded there, I'd go out on the field and play. So yeah, clearly people in Toronto didn't like that comment, and he said he talked to his dad and realized, he shouldn't have said that.
Yeah.
So,
the quote,
what playing in Toronto does to somebody.
Yeah, I found it on Twitter. I think Jordan Ciccelli, who used to work at TSA, who does the media relations for the CFL, shouts it to her. She was like, holy fuck, we're cooked. It's not even funny. The Jays are dead last in the AL East with a 35-43 record. What are we doing? Granted, we have been on a 7-game losing streak. No one's gotten fired. We have guys who are hitting like 315 and like 15-game stretches sitting on the bench. Like, what is going on? The ghosts of Charlie Montoya's fucking bongos are inside that locker room, and it is fucking rap-a-tum-tumming all over us right now. It's bad. It's like it's not even Jover. It's mega Jover, dude. We're like DEFCON like 1 of Jover. It's
painful.
It's
gone. It's awful. I still have nightmares about that 2021 team that missed the playoffs by a single game. That would have been the team, honestly. As silly as it is to say that, like, the one team that missed the playoffs out of the last 4 seasons was the one. It was. Simeon and Vladdy both finished in MVP finalist voting. Robbie Ray won the Cy Young. Like, that was this is a hockey show. Sorry. This is a hockey.
No, it's a fraudcast. Told you, it's a fraudcast. I mean, hockey's over anyway. Let's talk about baseball. Let's talk about how our team sucks. And Tougie, who are you a fan of again? I can't remember.
It would be the Boston Red Sox, led by one Jarren Duran.
Yeah! We all suck. It's okay. We suck right now. It's great. It's great.
Red Sox are over 500, baby, and in a wild card spot. Look out.
For now.
Jays blew that lead yesterday.
It's a good time.
To the Red Sox.
No, but Vladdy hit like a 457 home run or wherever the fuck it was over the Green Monster on top of another building. Let's just talk about that.
Yeah, man, he's going to hit so many on that short porch in New York now. Fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
So for the Florida Panthers, see, sometimes you just got to let them go. You just got to let them go. For the Florida Panthers, Sasha Barkov becomes the first Finnish captain in NHL history to raise the cup, which is awesome. I watched like every player interview on ice that I possibly could. I was just like totally wrapped up in the aftermath of it. The peak, the pinnacle was Matthew Tkachuk. On both the ESPN side and the Sportsnet side. The ESPN side, it was just really nice. Although Emily Kaplan's caught a lot of heat. I don't know if you guys saw this. Matthew Tkachuk. It's just, I just can't believe it. And she goes, "What can't you believe the most?"
Oh.
Look, it's a high pressure situation to try and make the conversation flow. I'm not going to take shots at her, but Jesus Christ. What can't you believe the most?
Just put a fucking, I can.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's a double Tkachuk.
Yeah, his Sportsnet interview was so much better, though, as he caps it off. Shout out to my fans in Calgary. You know I couldn't let the Oilers win. Just way to win back the favor of that fan base that was devastated by your departure. Like, there's just no other way to put it. I mean, unless you're an Oilers fan, Matthew Tkachuk came off so well in those 2 interviews. Just tremendous. And again, it was awesome to see a lot of those guys like Kyle Okposo get interviewed. And there's so much about the team, and we'll talk about the team specifically in a moment in terms of like what's next for them. But then you also talk about, Bill Zito. And I mentioned, the job he's done is building the team. And he's done just absolutely incredible work since the fall of 2020. I mean, he has been one of the best, if not the best GMs in that time frame. So to see him with the cup and he was getting all teary-eyed because his dad was on the ice with him, that was a nice moment. Seeing Roberto Luongo with the cup, was a great moment. Again, every time people were like, "Oh, aren't you upset?" It's like, no, man. I would have been rooting for the Canucks in 2011 if it was anybody else but Boston. It was awesome to see Luongo, one of the best of his era, a hockey Hall of Famer, get his cup. But the pinnacle of like, oh man, for as much as you can hate playing against that team in terms of being happy for that team, Paul Maurice. And I think what clicked for me last night was like, there are certain teams that I think some people find it difficult to feel happy for, and it's because they're so expected to win, and they're just this juggernaut of a team. Outside of Pittsburgh, unless you were a fan of a rival team, most people were rooting for the Sharks. Most people were rooting for the Preds. when the Penguins went back-to-back, because the Pens were just this fucking juggernaut. Same with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Just this juggernaut of a team where it's like you can respect the greatness, but at the same time, it's like, well, of course they fucking won. Look at them. The Florida Panthers are a tremendous team, but they looked human at times throughout this postseason, and I think that's what clicked for me in regards to like why it was easier to feel happy for them. Like, they take out Tampa in round 1. They beat Boston in round 2, which sucks for me, but is still a good win. They beat the Rangers, but then in a lot of ways, I think them being up 3-0 and then going to game 7 would have endeared them to a lot of people. Just in terms of, you know, their fight and their drive to just get the job done at the end. And it's summed up so perfectly with Paul Maurice. I said it last night, and I was thinking about it more today, and I stand by this. I'm very biased towards the Ray Bourque Stanley Cup Rays because, you know, of just being, you know, growing up as a Bruins fan, my dad's favorite player and everything, you know. And I still just think in general, it's very tough to beat that. Like, there have been some all-time Stanley Cup raises, you know, Konstantinov getting it in 98 with the Red Wings, you know, after his accident. Or you look at, you know, Rod Brindamore's is an all-timer. Ovechkin's is an all-timer. I mean, there's a lot of good ones. But for a coach, Paul Maurice raising the cup and not even, like, looking at it. Like, it felt like the fucking Breakfast Club putting his fist in the air at the end of the film. Just raising the cup, not even looking at it. You could see, like, the weight of the world coming off his shoulders because he finally won it. It's a fucking all-timer. His interviews after the fact were awesome, especially his one with Sportsnet, you know, mentioning that his dad's name is going, you know, the last name of Maurice is going on the cup alongside the greats that, you know, his dad's favorite players and stuff like that. Like, just a fucking all-timer. I don't know how someone couldn't be happy for Paul Maurice. And then he shouts out, I hope the Jets get one next. Like, Jesus Christ, put Paul Maurice in the Hall of Fame today. What the fuck are we doing here?
Like a 30-year career. Like, dude's always had some sort of role in, like, as a coach. That's a guy who I'm surprised he isn't currently in the fucking Hall of Fame. I guess now you have a cup to his legacy. They might incline him to put him in next year.
He's going in. He's 100%. Absolutely going.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
His history, by the way, he got injured when he played for the Windsor Spitfires, and ownership or the management above him gave him an option: retire and become an assistant coach, or we'll trade you, because just the roster construction. So he became an assistant coach with Windsor, eventually becomes assistant coach and then head coach of the Hartford Whalers during the 95-96 season, stays with that organization through 2004, becomes the Marlies head coach after the 05 lockout, becomes the Leafs head coach, goes back to Carolina, spends a year in the KHL, and then goes to Winnipeg in 2013-14 mid-season and is with them up until nearly the beginning of 2022. And then, just what he's done with the Florida Panthers and everything. He's been the perfect coach for that team in the direction that Bill Zito's taken them. So that's been awesome. And in terms of what's next for the Panthers, $19.5 million to spend. A lot of UFA forwards that they have to try to figure stuff out with. Nick Cousins, Lomberg, Steven Lawrence, Kyle Okposo, Sam Reinhart's the big one, Kevin Stenlund, Vladimir Tarasenko, with Anton Lundell as an RFA. Defense, RFA Josh Mahora. UFAs of OEL, Kulikov, and Montour, and Anthony Stolars is a UFA goaltender. They got money to keep some of them, but certainly not all of them. The big ones
you got to think Reinhart and Montour take up most of that space, just between the two of them.
Yeah. I would think that's the approach, right? Is to pay them and take a little bit of a hit in terms of what depth you might be able to get. But that's also okay because you're only paying Sasha Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk a combined $19.5 million. Like, the Leafs are spending more on Mitch Marner and John Tavares currently, for an example, to bring it back to the Leafs as always. They still have one more year of Sam Bennett and Carter Verhaeghe at a combined 8.5.
Jeez.
Rodriguez and Luosterainen, $3 million each for the next 3 years. Ekblad's got a year left on his deal. Forsling is signed forever. Like, they are in a really good spot to keep that team together and to still make another run at it. It's just, it's crazy. Like, just the turnaround that the Florida Panthers have had. From the Edmonton perspective, obviously they became the first team in 78 years to force a Game 7. They did fall short. We talked about Connor McDavid getting the Conn Smythe. Look, the Conn Smythe trophy, as it is worded, I am going to read this description verbatim in terms of who it is awarded to. The Conn Smythe Trophy, in French, Trophée Conn Smythe, is awarded annually to the most valuable player of his team during the Stanley Cup playoffs. It is not the final only. It is the playoffs. I understand that Connor McDavid was held without a point in the final 2 games. But at the end of the day, there are now only 2 names in history that have ever had more points than him in a single postseason. That is Mario Lemieux and Wayne fucking Gretzky. I get it. Barkov was phenomenal. Bobrovsky, while inconsistent, showed up when the team needed him the most. But Jesus Christ, like, it was Connor McDavid's. And nor do I think you can blame him for not wanting to go out there.
No.
Because it's not about him at that point. He's the captain of his team in the locker room with his team. And I swear to God, most people just wanted him out there so that they could meme his sad face. Because he would have been, and it's funny because, you know, I made this joke last night and then I watched Steve Dangle's Cup Check today. And he mentioned it too. You look at the picture of J.S. Jaguar in 2003 getting the Conn Smythe, and he is literally the world's saddest man. And people wanted Connor McDavid with that face so they could meme him to death. And you cannot convince me otherwise. That's why people are like, oh, it's poor sportsmanship. Fuck that. He made the right decision. And again, J.S. Jaguar, when he won it, he didn't even bring the trophy back to the locker room. He got the trophy, didn't even take off his fucking gloves to get it, goes to the back and hands it to an assistant trainer or just leaves it on a bench and then goes back into the locker room with his teammates because that's not the trophy any of them wanted. Nobody grows up saying, I want to win the Conn Smythe. No, you want to win the big one that you're there to win. Nobody gives a shit about that trophy if you lose. Like, that's unless, and especially too, in this situation, imagine, because look, you never know. Imagine if this is Connor McDavid's only shot. Imagine if he never wins one. That trophy will be his sleep paralysis demon for the rest of his life. Like, you're never going to want to look at that trophy, ever, unless you end up winning one, and then you can be like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's kind of cool that I won this. Although, if he wins a cup, he'll be the freaking one to get the Conn Smythe anyway, more than likely. So, the whole Connor McDavid discourse to me was incredibly stupid.
Yeah, I think I mean, it should be unanimous, the fact that he won the Conn Smythe. Right? He broke a Gretzky record on the way, like, through the playoffs. Like, that's, you know, once, I mean, eventually, I mean, I guess it's up for debate whether or not he's going to do it, but, like, after Ovechkin potentially breaks the goal record, also crazy to think that, like, we could see 2 Gretzky records broken within the span of just a few years. But, like, when's the next one that's going to be broken, if ever? Like, it's a huge deal what McDavid did through the playoffs. So, you know, I understand Panthers fans who want everything. They want everything. All the awards should be for my team. My team won. Cool. But, like, no, McDavid is on another friggin' planet. Like, he's so good. And I just, if Oilers fans want any hope after all this, Ken Holland's gone. He might, you know, McDavid might finally get the supporting cast he needs.
So in talking about the Oilers, it's weird because everybody can look at their roster construction. And actually, you know, really quickly before that, to the point of breaking a Wayne Gretzky record. How many people have a Wikipedia page dedicated to their career achievements? Because Wayne Gretzky does. List of career achievements by Wayne Gretzky is its own fucking article.
That's amazing.
For the record, upon his retirement on April 18th, 1999, he held or shared 61 records, including 40 in the regular season, 15 in the playoffs, and 6 in the All-Star category. As of today, 24 seasons later, do you guys know how many records he still holds or shares? He retired with 61. How many does he still have?
59.
I was going to say like 57.
57 on the dot. Well done, Charlie.
Damn.
Wow.
4 records have been broken. Connor
That's
McDavid
nuts.
has broken one of those records. Ovechkin will likely break the goal scoring. It's insane. And again, the record that Connor broke was for 31 assists in the playoffs. He held that record for 36 fucking years, man.
Oh my God.
I don't get how any of this is a debate just because, he went pointless. I don't get it. For the record, because it's fun to talk about, the other records that were broken, by the way, obviously Connor McDavid was the most recent one.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, March 21st, 2023, Ovi broke Gretzky's record for the most 40 or more goal seasons with his 13.
Right. That's right, yeah.
In the second round of the 2022 playoffs, Leon Draisaitl recorded 15 assists to break Gretzky's record of 14. I think that was at that point in the playoffs, like how fast he recorded them, I think was what it was. It doesn't go into specifics, but Draisaitl broke a record. Gretzky's record of 12 All-Star assists has since been broken by Ray Bourque with 13, Mark Messier with 14, and Joe Sakic with 16. And then Gretzky's record of 15 regular season overtime assists has now been surpassed by 40 players. Patrick Kane is the current record holder with 26 assists in regular season overtime.
Damn.
That's it. Those are the only records that have been broken at this stage. Also, Gretzky finished his career with a 1.921 points per game average. At the time, Mario Lemieux held the record at a 2.005. After Lemieux returned from 2000 to 2005, his average fell to second place. So had Lemieux not returned, he would have that record, but Gretzky got it back. And then there's numerous unofficial records. It's ridiculous, basically. So yeah, 1, Connor McDavid deserved it. 2, it wasn't poor sportsmanship, but being a nerd. There you go. Now, you mentioned the departure of Ken Holland, and it could not have come soon enough because he was the worst possible choice for GM of that team at this given time.
Oh, yeah.
First and foremost, shout out to Corey Perry. I mean, at least the next GM probably won't have to deal with him, who has now lost 4 of the last 5 Stanley Cup finals. Which, shout out to dude. Seriously, if it wasn't for 2007, he'd be viewed as the most cursed player in sports history. It's absurd. But it's really weird because Edmonton, heading into the season, there was still just so much that you could view as like, okay, this is a roster construction flaw. And even with those flaws, they, by the way, just set the record for the highest PK percentage, or at least the net PK percentage of 98.6, which is the highest in history. With the top penalty killers in order of PK time being Ceci, Nurse, Desharnais, Ekholm, Janmark, Nugent-Hopkins, Brown, and Derek Ryan.
That's that stat followed by those first 2 names you mentioned that's nuts. That's wild.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, you look at that defense and it's like, cool. Nurse and Ceci, huge part of that defense. And I won't be surprised if it comes out that Darnell Nurse was injured as hell, because otherwise, oh my God, is that going to be one of the worst looking contracts in the league?
Mm-hmm.
Cody Ceci had a tremendous assist on the Oilers' only goal of Game 7, but man.
Oh, yeah.
he's still just so stupidly inconsistent. The acquisition of Ekholm was great, and he was great alongside Evan Bouchard, but here comes problem number one. Or whether or not Ken Holland stays or whoever the hell takes over. Evan Bouchard has 1 year left at $3.9 million, and then he's an RFA. That dude is getting so much money.
Yeah.
So much.
Double digits at minimum.
With the salary cap going up, I would imagine that's the case. The only argument against it is, Cale Makar is only making $9 million. Yeah, that's because fucking Chris McFarland is a space wizard. Like, it doesn't make sense as to how that contract. In fairness, actually, it was Joe Sakic who signed into that extension. It wasn't even McFarland yet. Joe Sakic is a space wizard for getting Cale Makar at just $9 million for a season. Good luck trying to get Bouchard for less than that. It's more than likely going to be more. Again, like Nurse, CC, like Brett Kulak's fine. They got Broberg as an RFA, Desharnais and Stetcher are both UFAs. They're probably gone. So do you have the biggest issues on defense moving forward into this upcoming season? Maybe not, but certainly after that season, at the end of 2024-25, what the hell are you going to do? Because Evan Bouchard has to get paid a shitload of money. Goaltending. It feels like the most obvious thing in the world. They have to buy out Jack Campbell. Spent basically all of this season in the minors. He's getting paid $5 million per for 3 more years. They do have Skinner at 2.6 for the next 2, and then Calvin Pickard's a UFA. They absolutely have to do something about Jack Campbell. And the buyout calculator, by the way, for Campbell,
it doesn't look that bad, actually.
It's okay, shockingly.
Yeah.
I believe the buyout window starts like tomorrow or Thursday. I'm not sure.
It's either today or tomorrow, I think. Yeah.
There you go. So his cap hit, again, he is on a contract of $5 million for 3 more years with a modified no trade. The cap hit would be 1.1, 2.3, 2.6, and then 1.5 for 3 years. After savings over the next 3 years would be 3.9 million, 2.7, and 2.4, and then technically 1.5. That you're not saving, but hey, he's off the roster. So it gives them quite a bit of breathing room if they move on from him to get the depth that they so desperately need, because forward-wise, sweet Christ, is my initial response to what that situation is. RFA, Dylan Holloway. UFA, Connor Brown, Sam Carrick, Warren Fogle, Sam Gagne, Adam Henrique, Matthias Janmark, and Corey Perry. Not to mention, you have 1 year left of Leon Draisaitl at $8.5 million. That man is getting paid no less than 12, if not higher. You have 2 years left of Connor McDavid at 12.5. That man is getting no less than $15 million. I don't want to say like their window's closed already because they lost here, but Jesus, like what they have to navigate over the next couple of off seasons. And I get the idea of people being like, oh, Leon won't leave, Connor won't leave. You don't know for sure.
Yeah.
With Leon Draisaitl especially, that guy has had such a contentious relationship with the media who have just decided to go after him seemingly at every fucking turn. Like, yes, he's okay. He's lived in Edmonton now for a decade. He, is probably close to guys in that locker room, whatever. Maybe another team can pay him more money. Maybe he wants to go to one of these teams with no income tax in a no income tax state, whether that be fucking Vegas, Dallas, the Florida teams that are always talked about. Nashville's up there. Oh, dude, fucking Nashville would love him. Jesus Christ. You just don't know.
God, imagine how much he makes on the open market a year from now. Like, it's even if he doesn't put together, like, an MVP level season. Like, say he, I don't know what how you'd even like what you'd even call a down Draisaitl year. Say he puts up, I guess technically this year kind of, because he barely broke 100. Say he puts up 105 ish again.
Yep.
He's gonna make so much money. Like he
The
probably
rumor-
becomes the highest AAV, right? Like
Yeah.
immediately next offseason.
Yes. Yeah. The rumor is for Travis Konechny on the Flyers of a 6-year deal at like $9 million.
That's
if Travis
crazy.
Konechny is rumored to potentially be getting $9 million, Draisaitl's getting 12 or 13 bare minimum.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's from the Oilers, let alone open market. You just don't know. And the thing is, you can never say never. Right? I mean, Wayne Gretzky didn't stay with the Oilers his entire career. He also didn't go back. He could have gone back after getting traded. He didn't go back. You never know. There are not too many players. I mean, Christ, we made the memes 10 years ago about Detroit. What the hell is Mike Modano doing here? What the hell is Daniel Alfredson doing here? You know, you never know where certain players are going to go, especially now, the financial situation is changing. The cap is finally starting to go up again, recovering from COVID. You just don't know. And it's going to be a rough time to be an Oilers fan because of essentially the depression of losing the Stanley Cup final. Even though, and I mentioned this on stream last night, like my wife, of all people, who is a very casual hockey fan because of me, made this point, like, getting swept would have hurt more than losing in Game 7, because getting swept is like, oh God, we're just not that good, are we? We got fucking shit on. As opposed to now, you get to leave that series saying, oh shit, we're good enough. We could have won it. We can do this. But how much does that matter when it comes to what team a GM is able to put together, how much money you're able to pay somebody? We've seen the struggles of the Maple Leafs finding their roster balance, paying their guys the big money. We've seen the success that Tampa had because they didn't have to pay all their guys the big money. And now, hey, all of a sudden they're handing out those contracts and, oh shit, Tampa doesn't look like Tampa anymore. Like, that is the NHL nowadays, is trying to win before your big names hit UFA status and you have to pay them the big bucks. You have to take advantage of those early RFA years and win then. Otherwise, there's a good chance your stars are going to go somewhere else. Look at the Buffalo Sabres. Look at how many players have left the Buffalo Sabres in recent years and won cups. Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, Kyle Okposo. There's a hell of a lot more, by the way. Ryan O'Reilly. I hate to mention that one, but yes. You just never know.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I think the Oilers are by far the most intriguing team to look at in the next little while here, just because every team has their intrigue, but like, do they consider trading Draisaitl and getting something for him now? I mean, the thing is, we don't even know who the hell the GM is going to be. Like, are they making that change this soon? Is Ken Holland going to run that draft and then be replaced? Like, I don't know. Who's to say?
Oh, man. I mean, not a whole lot of a draft to run. They have one pick in the first 4 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
So
that being their second
there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's a rough spot. So Stanley Cup final itself, awesome. The intrigue moving forward might be even better just for those reasons. In terms of the intrigue moving forward, by the way, I'll bring this up first in regards to the draft, because I think we'll have more to talk about when it comes to trades. The draft is this week. It's this Friday, which again is weird. Very much looking forward to it, though, especially now more after the trade that we're going to talk about here shortly. But the biggest thing is hopefully we have seen the end of the Russian factor being considered in hockey, because 1 year after being drafted, Matvei Michkov is coming over to play for the Philadelphia Flyers. And of course, at the top end of the draft this year, there is another Russian in Ivan Demidov that is in consideration. And we'll see if anyone's dumb enough to let him fall to number 7, like teams did for Michkov last year, which good for the Flyers, but how many teams are going to regret that? Are the Coyotes / now Utah going to regret taking Simashev? Are the Habs going to regret taking Reinbacher? I don't know if the Sharks will regret taking Will Smith because he was fucking awesome in the NCAA. And then obviously the top three of Bedard, Carlson, Fantilli all played in the NHL last year.
Right.
But man, Philadelphia, it worked out so well for them. And hopefully that doesn't happen again. But my intrigue for the draft, aside from like, hey, the draft is always interesting to watch, comes from trades that we've seen. And unless you guys have anything else to talk about in regards to like draft or hype about it, which I don't know how much hype you would have for it, given who you root for. I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs do have their first round pick this year.
Yay.
Controversially, that they didn't give up at the deadline to try to get better. And Ottawa has their first round pick. They no longer have two, but they do still have their first. And we'll talk about now why they don't have two. But to talk about that, we need to talk about how we got here. And we need to talk about the last week's worth of trades. It starts off on June 19th, where the Calgary Flames acquired defenseman Kevin Ball and a conditional first-round pick in 2025. It's top 10 protected, let's be honest. The Devils aren't going to have a top 10 pick in 2025. There's just... How would they possibly be that bad? I just can't foresee it. The Devils acquire goaltender Jacob Markstrom on 31% retained, by the way, bringing his contract down to $4.125 for the next 2 years. The Devils get their goalie. The Flames open up space for Dustin Wolf to be the guy. They get a solid NHL caliber defenseman in Kevin Ball and a first round pick as they try to figure out what the hell they're doing. Good deal for both sides. You then move on. Darcy Kemper to Los Angeles for Pierre-Luc Dubois in one of the weirdest trades the NHL has seen in a while, where the Caps desperate to get rid of Darcy Kemper, the Kings desperate to get rid of Pierre-Luc Dubois. Rob Blake's biggest shortcoming so far was that Dubois deal and everything they gave up to Winnipeg, and then it just didn't work. So the reason why we had to mention those two deals first are obviously Kemper's on the move. The Kings get a goalie. All of a sudden now they don't need a goalie. The Devils, one of the teams where you're like, man, they really need a goalie. Now they don't need a goalie. And it leaves a team like the Boston Bruins in a very interesting spot. What do you do with former Vezina winner Linus Ullmark? A guy who turned down a trade to the Los Angeles Kings, reportedly at the deadline. Where do you send him, and what can you get, given you're limited in where you can send him, and the goalie market is starting to dry up a little bit? Outside of a handful of teams that might be interested in either acquiring a goalie, the handful of teams that are interested in moving a goalie, maybe John Gibson, we'll talk about shortly, maybe UC Saros from Nashville, there really wasn't much wiggle room for negotiating. Which is why, as a Bruins fan, I don't hate this deal, but a lot of people do. The landing spot for Linus Ullmark is the Ottawa Senators, who at this point in time, Ullmark, of course, does not have an extension. The word from Elliot Friedman is that he might play out the season without an extension, which... Charlie, your thoughts on that point specifically before we move forward?
Man, watching Korpisalo was so brutal. I don't mind it, to be honest. Just the comparison between the two. If you're spending that 25th overall pick to dump 75% of Korpisalo's contract, and you just happen to get a year out of Ullmark as well, I'll take it.
There. Senators get an improvement in goal that they needed. They do give up Korpisalo, retaining 25%, so $1 million. They give up Mark Kastelik. Kastelik or Kastelich?
Kastelik.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And a first-round pick in this year's draft, 25th overall, that coincidentally belonged originally to the Boston Bruins. The Bruins sent that deal to Detroit in the Tyler Bertuzzi trade, and then it went to Ottawa in the DeBrincat deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And now it finds its way back to Boston. Let's start off talking about what this means for the Ottawa Senators. You get rid of Jonas Korpisalo. You give up a first-round pick to do it and a roster player in Kastelik. Not the most to give up for a former Vezina winner who gives you some optimism in goal, more than you would have had with Korpisalo or Forsberg.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you know, it's kind of that optimism that you guys haven't had since. I mean, well, Philip Gustafson had a good year, but probably Craig Anderson, right?
Oh yeah, definitely Craig. Yeah, Anderson's the last goalie Ottawa's had where we as a fan base have felt like, yeah, that goalie can steal a couple wins. That's about it though. Like it's been a revolving door of mediocrity, just in the Sens net. It's been rough. I can't remember the exact number. I believe, if you give me 1 second here, I can figure this one out. I had the stat for, just to give you an idea of how many goalies the Sens have gone through. Let's see here.
Oh, the answer's a lot.
The answer is brutal. Let's see here.
I love looking up the list of Sens goalies, and I already have it in front of me, actually. So
Okay.
here's the Ottawa Senators goaltending history in recent years. This past year,
can we play a game where we name them? Why not?
I don't know if
right?
Charlie's already, how much of the list he's already looking at. So
I'm trying to find. I had a number. I wrote a piece for Inside the Rink a little while ago, and I had
what number are you searching for?
I'm just looking for. I believe it was how many goalies they used in a single season, which tied, I believe, a league record.
God, yeah,
a year ago. I'll have to keep looking for that.
I remember they
I
used
could
like
try to look
8 at
for
one
that.
point. I think that's the record, like 8.
Oh, so it must be. Was it 2023? Might have been.
22-23, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah,
So goalies in 2023: Cam Talbot, Levi Marilainen, Kevin Mandolese, Magnus Hellberg, Dylan Ferguson, Madge Sogard might have played that year
Yeah, he
too.
did.
Anton Forsberg might have played that year too. They've had a lot of goalies. So since Craig Anderson retired in 2020, here are goalies that have suited up for the Senators: Marcus Högberg, Joey Decord, Matt Murray, Philip Gustafson, Cam Talbot, Levi Marilainen, Kevin Mandolese, Magnus Hellberg, Dylan Ferguson, Madge Sogard, Jonas Korpisalo, and Anton Forsberg. It's been 4 years, man.
Yeah.
That's insane. Oh my God. Endo, how many was that on a full count, by the way?
Too many.
Fair enough. But I think you could go back the previous decade from when Anderson retired to when he got there, and you wouldn't have had as many goalies play in that time since he's retired, which is insane. So again, Ottawa gets that goaltending that they need. They still have a decent draft haul this year. First round, second round, no third rounder, but 3 in the fourth round. $11.3 million in projected cap space, with RFAs Boris Kachuk, Parker Kelly, and Shane Pinto, UFA Dominic Kubalik. On defense, RFA Eric Brandstrom. And now in goal, they have Ullmark and Forsberg, which should be a pretty good tandem. Not a bad move. Not a bad move. Not a bad spot to be in heading into free agency, depending on, like, okay, what the cost is for certain RFAs to solve that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you still have rumors about, is Jacob Chikrin on the way out and that type of thing. Like, so my thoughts, and I want to know your thoughts. My thoughts on the Sens: this is a good move forward, especially if they can lock down Ullmark. They still have some pieces to move and some things to move, to maneuver around before you can really be confident of, like, oh yeah, this is a playoff team that can do some damage.
Yeah, I mean, us as a fan base, we've been very confident. I would say 2 seasons in a row now, and it's not looking good. Um, and I do think, if Chikrin is moved, it'll be for less than the Sens paid for him just over a year ago. They paid first and 2 seconds, that first being the 12th overall pick. And from what they've been saying, reports are saying that the Sens are looking for a first and a second, or a first and a prospect in return, which I'm surprised by. I thought that Chikrin was going to be used in a move to bring in, NHL talent. I thought Chikrin was going to be involved in that Allmark deal. I honestly thought the price was going to be more along the lines of Chikrin and pick 25, if they were going to dump a goalie on Boston as well. So, I still can't believe that that's what got the deal done. That price that it actually was. I'm shocked that they weren't outbid by somebody else. But yeah, I think with defense, the main issue for the Sens is they've addressed goaltending. They need to fix the defense, because as brutal as it was last year, Forsberg and Korpisalo both had 890 on the dot for save percentages. A lot of that had to do with the defense. The defense, like Thomas Chabot just wasn't healthy. Chikrin for the first time ever was healthy, but wasn't playing his best defense. You look at who are the shutdown guys. It's Zub, who played well, Travis Hamonic, Jacob Bernard Docker. Like defensively, the Sens need some shutdown guys on defense to help the goalie, because even with Korpisalo, he maybe would have let in. There might be a game where he lets in 4 goals on like 18 shots, but 2 of them were breakaways, and 1 was a shot where the a player on the other team just like smacked it in 2 feet out the net with absolutely nobody on the Sens trying to cover him, right? So, he could have an absolutely brutal game, and you're like, well, only 1 goal was on him. Then obviously there were other games where he let in 4 what should have been easy saves. So I do think it's a mix of the goaltending being horrible, but also the defense doing absolutely nothing to help them out. So with that in mind, I do think that Allmark is going to have a pretty decent dip in numbers this season, and I think Korpisalo is going to improve quite a bit with Boston. When Allmark has a 907 and Korpisalo has a 905, and all the Sens fans are freaking out that you could have saved that first round pick. Sens fans, I'm begging you, remember that Korpisalo's numbers would be very different playing behind the Sens defense. So we'll see what happens. I think Chikrin's going to be moved. Apparently the asking price is just for futures, which I'm surprised by. I don't know if they're trying to free up cap space to go after. I don't think they're going to be able to afford Pesci if he hits free agency. So I think they're probably going to be gunning for like a Chris Tanev, or just someone to put on that second pairing on the right side. And which, if they get the right shutdown guy, it'll hopefully help Allmark a little bit more. Obviously, you want Allmark to have a really good season and make him want to re-sign long-term, ideally. God, I don't know. Just, what they got to bring Allmark to the 400,000 square foot IKEA that we've got in Ottawa, and just really impress them that way. That should do the trick.
That's a great selling point. I think you hit the nail on the head in regards to like expectations this year. And I think that's why I'm more positive with the Korpisalo thing, right? Odds are Allmark is likely going to a less solid team defensively, for lack of a better way to phrase it. Whereas Korpisalo is going to be on arguably the best defensive team he's ever played for.
I don't think that's a stretch at all. That's probably
super.
If you remove even if you look at LA for the 20 games he was there, if that, I still think you're comparing it to the 23-24 Sens and just the Blue Jackets in general. It's not tough to say, it's not a high bar, but it is a very good defensive team that's going to be in front of them.
Right. And I think, for the Bruins, Chikrin should have been involved. He doesn't necessarily fit.
No.
what they're
Yeah.
building, right? Like he wouldn't be there long term, basically. Like they have their 3 defensemen in McAvoy, Lindholm, and Carlo that are locked up. You don't typically have room for a 4th guy like that. And given that they have Mason Lohrei and how good he looked in the playoffs at times, it's the last year of his ELC. He's a guy that they're going to invest in. It's just he wasn't a fit for that team. So I agree. Like on one hand, it could look like it was a bit lower than expected, especially when you factor in taking on Korpisalo. But I do think like this is his best chance. Like if Jonas Korpisalo cannot succeed on this Boston Bruins team as a guy to take pressure off of Swayman so that he doesn't have to play 60 fucking games like UC Saros and then be burned out by playoff time.
Yeah.
Then Korpisalo's cooked at the NHL level and he'll be in Sweden or Finland within the next 4 years, right? Like that's just how it's going to go. And I mentioned Jeremy Swayman. He's the big factor to this, right? Allmark would have absolutely been moved into more of a backup role instead of a 1A, 1B. Like Swayman's the guy. That was always the plan, that Swayman was going to be the guy. It was just a matter of where Allmark was going to go or if they were going to keep him for 1 extra year and then lose him for nothing. They elected to get something for him, and they also elected to prioritize a first-round pick over a couple extra $1 million in cap space. I think Mark Kastelik is like the ideal Bruin, right? He's fucking 6'4", 220. He hits, he fights, he's good on the draw. Like he's a Bruin, right? But this is the Bruins going to be, unless they trade it, the Bruins' first round pick since 2021, when they took Fabian Lysell 21st overall. And they also didn't have a first round pick in 2020, and then 2019 they took John Beecher. They have very few first round picks over the last 5 years. And I've had some people be like, what are you talking about? It's not a deep draft class. I disagree. I think this first round is incredibly interesting because you have a good amount of guys at the very top that have been taking so much of the attention away from guys that would have been a little bit more highly touted previously. An example of that, and granted, you can go on Elite Prospects and look at their draft center and all the affiliated rankings and stuff like that. But Craig Button's TSN ratings, like in a year where you have Adam Yarasek as like number 19, guys like Andrew Basha, Ryder Ritchie, like there are some guys in that lower half of the first round that are very likely to pan out. And because of that, and because the Bruins have arguably the worst prospect pool in hockey, as they're often labeled with, it's a decent time to pull off this trade to get a first round pick in there, someone that you might be able to succeed with, to get rid of a goaltender who was going to leave you at the end of next year anyway. Yes, you're dealing your strength in terms of that goalie tandem, but at the same time, that was only going to last for so long. As much as it sucks to see the goalie hug go away, it was only going to last for so long. And we'll see what the Bruins do with this pick. Like, I don't think you can properly, and I say this with every freaking trade, right? I'm not someone that has to be like, oh, the day it happens, this team won, this team lost. This is the best trade of all time. This is the worst trade of all time. You legitimately need 5 years, especially when it involves a pick, to know what this deal is. We don't know what's going to happen with Allmark on Ottawa. He could sign there long term. He could leave at the end of next year. He could get traded. If they find out, oh, he's not going to stay and we're not in the playoffs, they could move him at the deadline. And then who knows what they get for that? And if it involves picks, you got to wait. For the Bruins, if they make this first round pick, sometimes 25th overall is Michael McCarron. Sometimes it's David Pasternak, who was a 25th overall pick in his draft class.
I was just about to say the Bruins are going to pull something crazy here. Like,
you just don't know. So it's one of those things where 5 years from now, get back to me and we'll see how it worked out for both sides, because you just don't know. And again, maybe the Sens don't keep Linus Ullmark. Maybe they deal him at the deadline and get a first round pick from the team that finished in 9th, but that team in 9th won the draft lottery, and they get fucking Gavin McKenna out of this. Who knows? That's the beauty of it. Like, generally, like, that's how I like looking at trades. And granted, Cat Friendly's going away, but you can now look back at trades from 2019-20, 2018-19, and be like, okay, who won this deal, right? Like, how did this work out for somebody? And, you know, you get a little bit more of a view this time out, right? Like, February 24th, 2020. I turned 26 on that day. God damn it, what happened to me? Old. That was the date that the Toronto Maple Leafs helped facilitate a trade to get Robin Leonard to Vegas.
Oh my God.
And think about how that trade has worked out in regards to those. It's like, you know, Chicago ended up with goaltender Drew Comesso out of that. There's so many other ones too, just in regards to how this worked out. Like, same day, trade deadline, Tampa Bay acquired Barclay Goodrow from San Jose. Worked out pretty damn well, especially given that people were like, what the fuck are you doing giving up a first round pick for Barclay Goodrow? That first round pick turned into Ozzy Weisblatt, who was literally just traded to Nashville this week. You never know how this stuff's going to work out. Like, it takes time to see that full picture. I completely agree. This is going to be one of the most interesting trades to look back on 5 years from now, because this could be great for both teams. This could be a fucking disaster for both teams. That's the fun of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Any final thoughts on that trade before we talk about our final little interesting talking point here when we mention trades?
This is
the story of a girl ride a river and drown the whole world.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Jesus.
I don't want to be too confident, because I was after DeBrincat, after Chikrin, but this feels like such a genuinely fantastic move. Again, like you said, this could end up bad for both teams. It could be great for both teams, but like right now, this is the first time I've been confident in the goaltending in Ottawa in like years. So
I would be optimistic like you are in regards to Steve Stamkos so far, right? And you know, it's funny because we should have had you on the podcast. I hate to say it, but when Eugene Melnyk passed away, because when he passed, immediately it was like, you cannot say anything negative about how that man was holding back the team anymore. But
oh my God, dude, that whole thing. Ian Mendez released a piece on The Athletic, basically outlining how he was a horrible person. He just happened to finish it shortly after he passed away. He was working on it when he was still alive. And it didn't come out until after he had passed away. And everyone's like, how dare you speak ill of the dead? It's like, no, dude, he was a fucking horrible human being. Horrible person. Who held an entire fan base hostage whenever he felt the need to. You know, like he turned, you know, Ottawa, which is, you know, not a hockey town, it doesn't have any fans, put up fucking billboards telling him to get out of town. You know what I mean? Like this was a bad dude. And yeah, the idea of you can't say anything bad about him because he just died. Wild. Wild take.
And it's for that reason that, you know, you kind of mentioned like Sens fans have been like, off-season champions, whatever.
Yeah, 3 years running.
The thing is, though, I will not blame, like, I get why, you know, rival fan bases dunk, right?
Yeah.
But I cannot blame any Sens fans for being optimistic, because they have gone through that turmoil post losing to Pittsburgh in the Eastern Conference Final in 2017. It's the same thing as Detroit fans that were super hyped up about their chances to make the playoffs this year. Yeah. Sabres fans, Habs fans, Blue Jackets fans. It's like you look at a lot of these fan bases where it's just like, oh, God, give us something. You get that little bit of optimism. Let them have it. Like, let them have it. Like, I'm fine with it. Like, yeah, you should have some Ducks fans. Like, you should have some optimism.
Yeah.
But obviously, naturally, it's the internet, and people are going to dunk whenever they get the chance to.
Yeah, it's a very healthy way of of going about things.
Yeah.
My mood is more based on this team that I hate than my team that I like. I get more joy out of seeing teams I hate struggle than seeing my team find any success.
Wrestling discourse on social media for the last 5 years.
Oh man.
Final thing to talk about here is one of the more surprising sets of trades that we have seen in a bit that can be summed up as he's a cooking of something up. And that's Steve Yzerman in Detroit. Interesting first deal that went under the radar, obviously. They dealt former second round pick last year, defenseman Andrew Gibson, to Nashville for prospect Jesse Kiiskinen, who was taken in the third round last year, and a second rounder. Weird trade from Nashville, but okay. And then the big one is they moved that second rounder that they just acquired from Nashville, originally belonging to Tampa, and Jake Wallman to San Jose for future considerations. There's something coming. Whether or not it's John Gibson, as has been rumored, for a trade or whatever, for them to move Jake Wallman, who finally found his footing at the NHL level with this team after, kind of middling in St. Louis, was heading into the second year of a 3-year deal at $3.4 million. It's a surprising move to see him be the one to go and to essentially package a second round pick to get rid of him. For the Sharks, face value, A++ from Mike Greer. That they were the team in on this, that is spectacular. And I had literally said last night on stream that if there's any team in the NHL, now that the Coyotes are gone, that needs to do what the Coyotes did before and just be like, we will take your sick, we will take your injured, and give us picks to do it, but we'll take them. It needs to be the Sharks, and bam, here it is. Second round pick and Jake Wallman for nothing. Like,
that's
whatever
wild.
Yzerman's cooking up, and he has space to cook. He's got $32.7 million in cap space. They got some RFAs and UFAs to take care of, but whatever he's planning, I mean, it's got to be a home run. And I'd be surprised if it's a goalie, though.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think Lucas Raymond and Mo take up out of that combined?
Oh, Mo's up too. I thought it was just Raymond. Ooh.
Like, I mean, do they? I don't think they try and bridge Mo, right? They might try and they would probably bridge Raymond, but Mo, I feel like they'd probably try and throw that 8 years at him. So I have no idea.
If they bridge more at Sider, you got to figure Bouchard got just about 4. So would it be more or less than that with the cap going up? Oh,
yeah. I don't know, but I don't know. I think they're going after a huge name in free agency. You got to think, right? Like with this, I mean, do they have any faith in Ville Husso? I don't know.
Husso and Lyon right now are the two goalies under contract. Reimer's up, and then in the system they have Sebastian Casa, but he's still 21 years old. He did have a solid season in the AHL. Like, maybe he gets a look here and there, but he's not the guy that they're like, yes, he's our guy now.
Yeah.
So,
like, are they looking at Stamkos or looking at Gensel? Like,
Mitch Marner. Mitchell.
I saw someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone was saying how much sense would a Marner for like Saros plus deal? Like, how much sense would that make? And I think it's kind of an interesting look at that. Okay, well, I have no idea how Leafs management is right now. If there's been any indication on pro or anti in division trading, so I don't know if that has anything to, if that would affect a potential Red Wings deal, if that's what they're trying to do. So has there been any indication on that since, in the past year, I guess? I'm not sure.
Let me see. Brad Treliving's history
For living in the moment.
as a GM. Allow me to look up his trading history.
It's not good.
Well, in general, maybe not, but in terms of like his history, God, he's made some deals. Hold on. Okay, so if we are looking at in division trades, specifically when he was with Calgary, because obviously there would be more of a history to go off of there.
Mm-hmm.
He never made a trade with Vancouver when he was the GM of Calgary. He's literally never made a trade with Vegas. Has he ever made a deal with Edmonton? He made one deal with Edmonton. Oh boy, it was a big one too. The James Neal for Milan Lucic swap
Oh, wow.
was the only deal he ever made with the Oilers. Los Angeles, he made a handful of trades with LA. Draft pick swaps. Derek Forbert to Calgary for a 4th round pick. Oscar Fantenberg. So nothing major with LA. Seattle, they did the deal to acquire Kalle Yarncroke at the 2022 deadline and Tyler Pitlick in 2021. Anaheim. I don't know if he never did a deal with Anaheim. And San Jose sent Brandon Davidson for future consideration. So it's not been a common theme in his history to trade in division. So who's to say? But yeah, Yzerman's got to cook something up here to win back some favor, because giving up a guy like Wallman in a second just to ditch $3.4 million in cap is surprising, to say the least. But again, that's why we wanted to do this show today. There's just so much going on, from the Stanley Cup final wrapping up to instantly, like, we're heading into draft week and free agency starts in less than a week. And it's just a really fun time, especially when we no longer have to deal with officiating or the DOPS doing their best to ruin the sport.
Yeah.
So there's that. Gentlemen, it's been almost 2 hours. It's been a great time. And yeah, I don't have too much else to add. I think we covered everything. Yet somehow it feels like we barely scratched the surface, but that's the fun part of it. Endurance? What do you have going on, aside from playing the footballs with me on stream?
I won a competition held by Pro Hockey Life to customize a free set of Warrior Ritual G7 pads. Yeah, G7. Yeah, so that happened today. That's been the most of everything that I've been doing, and I've been in Tougies Discord talking to all of his lovely people, aka AJ and maybe like 3 other people, about designing the gear. And we've come to an agreement that that's really fucking hard, even though it's not my money being spent to design gear. But I've been doing that and playing football with Tougie. So that's what I got going on. I'm also moving, so fun stuff.
There you go. A busy time, a busy man, as always. Charlie, I want to thank you for joining us today, especially on such short notice. And hey, hopefully you're not a stranger around these parts, especially
For sure.
especially
Yeah,
throughout the
thanks
summer.
for bringing me on.
Especially
Yeah, no,
with Sin
thanks for it.
on assignment in Finland. we always love having a third voice. So
Anytime. Literally anytime, guys.
and what better time with the trade that worked out, of course. But yeah, odds are you guys will be seeing Charlie back here very soon, at least again when we are able to record. Things are still a bit iffy scheduling wise, but we're going to do what we can. Charlie, of course, as mentioned, part of Game Over Ottawa, which is transitioning over from the SDPN side of things to its own independent status. Uploaded a video today, actually a podcast today, in regards to the Linus Allmark trade and what might happen with Jacob Chikrin here in the future, and a simple search of Game Over Ottawa. You can find that. And Charlie, anything else going on? I don't know the last time you uploaded to the old music channel that I was a fan of, though.
Yeah, no, I just as a side thing, started a music channel. Have not uploaded anything since my end of year list for my favorite songs and albums of 2023. So that's been pretty quiet. But yeah, we've got a ton going on in Game Over Ottawa. Obviously, like the plan is still to be a live show following Sens games, but being independent means we have a little bit more wiggle room in what we're allowed to do, and just because of that, we've been doing a whole lot of recording stuff. Some off-season preview stuff like that. Obviously, a lot of it's going to be out of date now because we did some goaltending stuff before the trade, talking about a draft preview when we thought that the Sens were still going to have that 25th overall pick. So a bit of it's, that's the world of sports podcast. It's out of date within days of it being uploaded. But yeah, it should be plenty of off-season stuff going forward with that channel. So anyone who's interested in checking out Game Over Ottawa, you don't have to wait until October for the live show. We'll have plenty going up through the draft and through free agency, everything like that. So any Sens fans out there who want to watch a couple of people hopefully have good takes, check out Game Over Ottawa. It's a good time.
And watch as the mood progressively falls as the season goes.
Yeah. Oh, we are hyped in October, and by mid-December, we're ready to shut her down. Yeah.
There you go. Well, with that, everybody, again, thank you for joining us here. An impromptu show in some ways, but again, tis the season to be hyped about hockey, even though the season is over. We'll see you all when we see you. That could be tomorrow. That could be a week from now. It could be a month from now. We'll see what happens. Not the best schedule for a podcast, but we're doing what we can. For now, goodbye.